Individual teeth or individual groups of teeth. As we learned in the basic course, individual teeth can also be restored with Componeer. If the restoration is not major, then it certainly makes sense to adapt the Componeer as closely as possible to the preparation to achieve an excellent fit. The objective and purpose of an individual restoration is to restore surfaces as atraumatically as possible or with little trauma. This is consistent with the Componeer in obtaining a higher quality restoration than compared with the direct technique. This also applies to the quality of the margin in the cervical and incisal region. If only little is to be restored, the Componeer shell is adapted to the preparation. If the position of individual teeth needs to be modified, or if the layer strength of the restoration material becomes too thick, then one needs to work with dentine material in the background. In this case, we decided to move the posterior incisors forwards. However, it was decided to go for an isolated variant and only do the posterior teeth, not 4 teeth as in the diagnosis. Therefore, the cofferdam, rubber dam, was placed separately around the individual teeth. One can see that the teeth were restored directly with Componeer. As shown in the figure, dentine A1 and B1 was applied to give an homogeneous look, without the layer thickness in the background leading to increased translucency. The layer thickness plays a major role in single tooth restorations. Also in this example, we can see the discolored tooth of the single tooth restoration on the left, and on the right the Componeer was placed directly with dentine on the yellow surface. Only incisor edge abutments formed the initial situation. One can even see a partial fracture, which was probably caused accidentally by the mandibular incisor. And here too, slight preparation of the surfaces. One can see that the teeth are still relatively bright, which is why white opalescent was used. The Componeer was placed directly with white opalescent dentine material. One can also see that translucency diminishes with increasing dentine material. This avoids creating a disturbing line. One can also see the shade integration with regard to the adjacent teeth. After a certain period of water absorption, one can hardly distinguish the difference in color. And here too, white opalescence does not make the teeth too white. This depends on which dentine material was used as background. In this case, we see an individual group of teeth. These 4 anterior teeth are involved. The 4 anterior teeth need to be restored. For one, the basic tooth shape of the central incisors is not correct. And secondly, the cuspids have been placed in 2 position by the orthodontist, so that these need to be redesigned as posterior incisors. The group of 4 teeth was reshaped virtually without preparation. The Componeer white opalescent was placed together with dentine material. As the canines are in palatal direction, they do not need to be prepared. Had they been very bulbous, they would have required additional preparation. In this example, we can see 2 composite restorations which have lost some of their brilliance. The task was to restore these 2 individual teeth. In this case, the composite restorations were ground down. One can still observe the old edge abutments and some remaining composite. However, the composite fits reasonably well in terms of shade and opacity, with a single exception, the transition from dentine to enamel here in this region, where there is a slight darkening. To ensure that the outcome does not interfere optically, this region was covered with some dentine. After bonding, this discoloration or dark area would not be even more visible. And then to really see, does this have an effect or not? Here we are talking about approximately 1 to maximum 0.2 of a millimeter applied down here. As a rule, this is adequate to cover such areas. In such a case, it is worthwhile taking a brief look at the situation from incisal. Simply use a mirror and check whether there is any interference in the dental arch. When one applies small portions of composite to the surface, small spikes can occasionally be created through movement of the spatula. Such spikes would prevent the componeer from being pressed onto the surface. Mistakes can always happen. Here is a perfect example which shows how to remedy a mistake. A number 1 componeer was placed. If you look carefully, you can see that this is actually the wrong side. The second componeer was also placed. If you look carefully, you can see that left and right had been mixed up. However, this is of no consequence, as we have the skill to process the surface, and the material also makes this possible. This allows us to correct the individual contours quite easily. It therefore always makes sense to design the incisor edges somewhat longer. This offers an elegant solution to rounding off the distal and medial edges. You can see the final outcome. Shortly after removing the cofferdam, rubber dam, an overnight protective splint was also prepared, and after 2 weeks one can observe the colour integration with the adjacent teeth. That is the initial situation. A somewhat matte composite restoration, and a final outcome with a bit more character and life.